Welcome to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. I'm Ted Bonnet.
I'm Phil Proctor.
Hey, Phil.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay. I had a cold for a day.
Oh.
And I'm still. You can still hear a little bit of the sinuses.
Oh, that's something to look forward
But
to.
other than that, I'm feeling okay.
Megaflopolis?
Yeah, I saw Megaflopolis. We both did.
Yeah, I liked it very much, by the way.
I liked it.
I was able to
most of it.
follow the story.
Uh-huh.
I enjoyed the story. The sound design was beautiful.
And visually.
Visually
it was
beautiful.
A real trip.
Yeah. No, I got it. I didn't think it was incoherent at all.
No.
I mean, it was sort of like New York in the 70s.
Yes.
That was the backdrop of New Rome, was really New York 1970s. Having been there, that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I guess that was sort of Coppola's time.
You identified immediately with that.
Very much so. I wouldn't talk that one down, folks, and I would see it on a screen while you still can. If you still can.
Yeah.
Because it's really quite beautiful. Speaking of quite beautiful, Michael Simmons, as we know him, Mikey. Mikey.
That's me.
So good to see you, man.
Hey, man.
Welcome. Now, let me tell folks about you.
Yes.
You are
Fill 'em
a
in.
journalist, a musician, a journalist,
A musician.
and a friend. Michael Simmons. Now, you were, what a pedigree. What a pedigree. You were an editor at the National Lampoon in the 1980s.
Did your dad start that, by the way? Did he start the Lampoon? He did.
Well, one of the people who started it.
One of the people who started it.
Matty was your dad's name.
Matty Simmons.
Yep.
And he,
The late great.
Amazing guy.
what an interesting cat. I mean, he was right there he started the Diners Club, the first credit card.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
The
Well,
Debtors Club, we used to call it.
He actually came to believe that credit cards were deleterious, that they were a disaster for the human race. And
Well, thanks, Matty.
Yeah, thanks.
it wasn't a disaster for him personally.
No.
It was,
He also went on to start in the publishing business, 21st Century Publications, and he started in the National Lampoon. He started the Weight Watchers magazine.
yes.
My God, that
It was a weird office at the time when Weight Watchers magazine and the National Lampoon shared office space. It was a bizarre combination of types of people.
Yes.
You ranged from Harvard Lampoon graduates who with wicked senses of humor to diet freaks. It was,
He also started Heavy Metal magazine.
yes.
Wow.
What drugs was he on?
What was driving him? I mean, what was his passion?
Oh no, his passion was to make money. So he was motivated by what he thought was profitable. I mean, to be honest about it.
Sure.
Yeah, but they're all creative.
National Lampoon. Did it come directly out of the Harvard Lampoon? I mean, was that the genesis
Yes.
of it?
Yeah.
So what did he do? Did he find a Harvard Lampoon
Well, what
writer?
happened was he had this publishing company, and his publishing company helped the Harvard Lampoon guys at the time in the late 60s publish some parodies. They published a parody of Time magazine, a parody of Life magazine.
That's right.
And they were graduating from Harvard at the same time, these particular editors of the Harvard Lampoon. And they said, this is fun and it's profitable. Why don't we do this all the time and make it a national humor magazine, which America did not have at the time.
No. Well, it had Mad magazine.
Well, it had Mad, but Mad was for kids. For kids. This is for young adults, really.
Right.
Lampoon.
And the content was much more geared to an adult audience.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Well, there was nudity and words that we can't say.
Bad taste.
And bad taste.
Lots of bad taste.
What was the shot? We're going to shoot this dog if you don't buy this.
Yeah, that's the most
if you don't-
famous cover.
The most famous cover was if you don't buy this magazine, we'll shoot this dog. And it had a photo of a dog with a gun to its head,
Yeah.
and the dog's eyes were facing the barrel of the gun.
Nice.
It was an incredible shot. How they got it. It took them hours to get the dog to look over the barrel of the gun. And of course, animal lovers were appalled by.
You
Right,
think?
good, yeah.
Now
I don't know. Ask Lily. What's her name?
Ask what's her name? What is her name?
What name?
Your dog.
Oh, Luna.
Oh, the dog.
Luna.
As
Luna,
Luna.
yeah.
My agent.
I don't think Luna would like
Now, you went on to edit the Lampoon in the 80s.
In the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how you guys met, because you guys did a radio?
No. We did a record together.
Yeah. Right, record.
Oh, I worked with Jeff Mandel.
That's right.
And we did some musical parodies as well. And wasn't Chevy Chase and John Belushi, were they on the record?
Not the one we were on.
No, that was later.
They were on earlier ones.
An earlier one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they toured with them.
Yeah. In fact, I was company manager of a National Lampoon touring show that starred Belushi, Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, Joe Flaherty, Gilda Radner.
my
I was
God.
19 years old, and I was in charge of all these maniacs traveling all around the U.S. and Canada.
Oh, no.
And, I had to keep John from smuggling pot over the Canadian border. And,
Now, I saw the Lemmings show at the Village Gate in New York,
Yeah.
and you were the doorman?
Yes.
Now, we might have met, because I came to see that show.
You
at the
threw him
Village
out.
I tore your ticket.
Yeah, you probably, and threw me out.
Yeah, right.
But that was when I saw all of these performers, in this intimate club. And a year later, they were all on Saturday Night Live for the
Right.
first time.
Right.
But that was the genesis of it. It was
Yeah,
a funny show.
absolutely.
So you took my ticket. So
Yeah.
we did meet in New
I
York.
still have it somewhere.
So did Saturday Night Live come from? Well, I'm going to go see the movie Saturday Night Live soon. But did that cast, was that seen by Lorne Michaels? And he said, "This is my cast." I mean,
He used to come to the Lampoon show that I'm referring to, the touring show that was after Lemmings,
yeah.
that I was company manager for. We eventually returned to New York, and we settled in a theater. And,
Oh, you had a little run.
And it ran for, I don't remember, months. And Lorne Michaels came to every show for a
There you
period
go.
of weeks.
Wow.
And sooner than later, hired most of the cast.
Isn't that
of Saturday
something?
Night Live. The Saturday Night Live cast, about at least 3 or 4 of them, of the actors and writers, were from the Lampoon, maybe more.
Huh.
And then later, more Lampoon vets.
Michael O'Donoghue.
Michael O'Donoghue and Beats
Yeah.
writers.
Right.
And then Chevy, Belushi, Gilda.
Lorraine.
No, Lorraine wasn't
in there,
Lampoon,
was it?
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I've heard a dear friend of ours was involved in the very early Saturday Night Live episodes. He did cut all the shorts, all the film shorts. Keith Robinson. And
I know Keith.
You know Keith? Yeah. I'm gonna actually have him on. We're gonna have him on the show because he's got
cool.
some stories to tell. Anyway, he went to see the Saturday Night Live movie.
Oh yeah.
What is it? Is it a documentary?
No, it's
No.
It's
a
a
movie.
recreation.
Oh, I heard about this.
Anyway,
yes.
he said it was totally right on. It was exactly the vibe. It was
cool.
like going back in time to the very, to the genesis of that. He cut the first promo for Saturday Night Live's first episode.
Far out.
So he knew he was really, and the cast would come down and do all sorts of pharmaceuticals when they would cut all those short films. Yeah. And it was truly a wild experience that first. He was there the first 5 seasons. But anyway, good news is he said, and he's a filmmaker. He's very good at what he does. And he said, no, it was right on. So it evidently, if you want to go see the Saturday Night Live movie about the first show,
I'm intrigued. Yeah.
he said
Yeah.
it's nails it.
Why don't you get him on the show next week when I'm in New York?
Well, why you don't want to meet him?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to meet him, but
No, you know, Keith.
I know
I
Keith.
may just do that. So the Lampoon, even in the 70s, was pushing boundaries.
The right wing didn't like us. We were eventually. The Lampoon was almost killed off by the Reverend Donald Wildman, who had the Moral Majority or whatever
Oh,
it was
God.
called,
Yeah.
Christian
I remember that,
right
yeah.
wing.
Mm-hmm.
They organized boycotts against us.
But you in High Times,
Yeah.
the pot magazine,
Yeah.
that was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
But
so to speak.
what so Do you think that
Phil
something...
Proctor, ladies and
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
Oh,
Try the veal.
He's just getting warmed up, trust me. Now, you wrote a lot of serious stuff, too, for the LA Weekly and...
The LAPD came after me.
Why?
Yeah?
Because I wrote an article about they were going into bars and arresting bartenders and customers for the bartenders for serving intoxicated customers and for the customers for being intoxicated in public. And this started...
Jeez.
I found out about this when I was sitting in a bar, not me.
I was going to say, knowing you...
I know it's hard for you to believe, but it wasn't me.
Wow.
But it was my girlfriend at the time. She was slightly
Buzzed?
and the bartender served her, but she wasn't driving or anything. I mean, they had nothing on her, and the cops pulled her out and brought her down to the
Out of the
How
bar?
humiliating.
out of the bar into the police
For public
station.
intoxication?
Yeah, in a bar.
In a
bar.
private, in a
Shooting
private
fish-
establishment.
shooting
That's
fish
private
in
intoxication.
shooting fish oh
In a
boy.
barrel.
I
Shooting
almost
fish in a barrel.
said one of the 7 words.
And the barrel was filled with beer.
Right.
Wow. So they
hard
were.
to believe in a
So
bar.
did you take that up as a cause and?
I wrote a piece about it, and in the LA Weekly.
Yeah.
I found out that they were doing it all over LA, and I interviewed a bunch of bar owners and bartenders and customers, and they were going into bars and they were pulling without announcing who they were, or identifying who they were. These cops,
Plainclothesman?
yeah, plain-clothes.
Good grief.
From the Vice Squad, from the LAPD
terrifying.
Vice Squad, and they were pulling the bar's licenses off the wall.
What?
And the bartenders had no idea what was going on. They just saw these hoodlums come.
Thugs, yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, so I wrote a piece about it in the LA Weekly, and it became a cause celeb, and I won the LA Press Club award for that.
Well,
So what else has this
so-
amazing man done?
well, he's a musician. Did I mention that?
No. Yes.
Yeah, I said he was a musician
Twice.
and a journalist.
Yes,
and a
and a
journalist
musician.
and a musician.
Right.
You were dubbed the father of country punk by Creem magazine,
Right.
which is interesting. You were in Kinky Friedman's and the Texas Jewboys band for a long time.
Yeah, years.
Wow, what was that like? I mean, you played rhythm guitar.
I can't say, or the FCC will pull the
Pull the plug on you.
station's license. Kinky was one of a kind. We just lost him just recently.
That's right.
One of a kind, one of the funniest, smartest men I've ever known. And that's saying a lot because I've worked at the National Lampoon. I knew a lot of smart, funny people.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Just speaking of the Lampoon, that was the smartest, funniest group of people I've ever encountered.
What an extraordinary
in my
experience.
life. Yeah. It was really
Rarefied atmosphere.
unparalleled.
The zeitgeist of what you were involved in, that comedy, that cutting edge cultural push you were doing with Lampoon and all that. What do you see now?
The truth is that I don't know. It's scattered, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's occasional funny stuff. There's Saturday Night Live is hit or miss.
Mm-hmm. The late night monologues are probably right now the cutting edge of political commentary.
CNN is
comedy.
doing a funny show now.
Oh, you mean intentionally?
Yes, intentionally. Called something like "Have I Got News for You?"
Oh.
It's very funny.
Well, they're going to go behind a paywall soon. You know that.
What does that mean?
CNN's going to start charging like a $3 or $4 a month subscription fee to watch CNN.
Why?
Because of the turmoil in the media business.
Oh, my
I mean, Hollywood is in a free fall
we're in
in
a
many
terrible,
ways.
terrible place. right now.
All the models are
all the
exploded.
financial models are out of the.
I don't know how the networks do it because I watch Colbert and Kimmel and Seth Meyers all on YouTube. For $14 a month, I get commercial-free YouTube. It's the best. It's also the most popular streaming service now. Netflix is second. And Netflix is doing very well, too, now. They're all kind of rejiggering their situation, but it's almost, it's not our time, essentially. Obviously, we come from an earlier time, but it's very hard to comprehend.
I'll tell you something. One thing that I've learned as I've aged, I don't necessarily live in the present, and nor do I live in the past or the future. I don't. Time is different than it used to be. I do live to a certain degree in the past, and I look forward to the future, although I dread it in many respects, and I'm sure everyone can
identify with that.
Figure out why.
Yes, that level of anxiety we all share.
But it's not like there's no more next Beatles album. If you know what I'm saying.
Or Fireside Theater.
But there is the next Taylor Swift record.
Yeah, maybe it's not my time. I'm too old.
Yeah.
It's not my generation.
Yeah. Well, you're on the Sexy Boomer show, so you're in the right place. But I hear you. I mean, you mentioned something on the ride over here that we're living in the 21st century. What do you mean?
Well, I think it's been horrific. I mean, a decade of Trump is it's absurd.
But we had Nixon in Vietnam.
It was different, isn't it?
It was much worse or better?
It was better than Trump.
Was it better because we were younger?
No, Nixon wasn't.
No, we were focused on ending the war in Vietnam.
Right.
Taking to the street is really the way that we got things done in our time.
That's right. We did stop the war.
Yeah, we took
Vietnam
to the streets. War. But now people do it all from the privacy of their own bubbles, online. And you can protest online, but it isn't the same thing.
I mean, I'm asking these questions because I ask myself these questions all the time. Is it really worse now? I mean, certainly have climate crisis control. We have wealth concentration. We have information concentration. That's probably one of the most dangerous things is how contracted information has become.
Oh, good heavens.
It is, but it's also diffused because of the Internet. There's more outlets for information, and it's we don't have a shared culture anymore.
That's right.
No.
And
we have a fractured culture.
Even if we disagreed politically, and there was plenty of disagreement in the 60s and 70s, as you guys know.
Sure.
But it doesn't feel like we're sharing a culture any longer.
Right.
Everybody's in their own podcast. Everybody's on their own
frequency. One man, one channel.
Which, really, when you go back in time, it was far more constricted. There were 3 networks. But that created a collective consciousness, a water cooler conversation the next
like
day.
Walter Cronkite.
Or much less collective entertainment experiences. Look at the movie theaters.
Yeah.
I mean, they're empty. That creates opportunity for bad actors to manipulate the culture wars. And I think Trump represents like the worst manifestation of
that kind of influence.
Confirmation bias like Fox television.
Yeah, but remember, Hitler also used the radio to propagandize.
Yes. And my grandmother who lived through
it. The economy, stupid.
She said, I remember asking her when I was a kid, like, how did a guy like Hitler come to power? How did that happen? And she said, simple. The economy was terrible, and he promised all the mothers jobs for their sons. He just didn't specify what the job was. Right. They lost everything. They were in Berlin. I just wonder about that things are so concentrated now and so filtered into individual channels.
We're all more alienated than we used to be. As alienating as the 60s was, or as much disagreement as there was.
We were united in our disagreement.
We were. We were arguing about the same thing. We're not even arguing about the same things anymore.
No, and there's an epidemic of loneliness.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
People are isolated.
It's alienation. I mean, this is the most alienated, in my lifetime, this is the most alienated period in history that I've experienced.
You were in the culture, Michael, writing about it, right? Like a rat fink from the inside, right?
Well, I covered a lot of, I covered the
That's a responsibility, though, isn't it? To write about the culture you're a part of.
Well, it was a passion, too. It was, I was passionate about the counterculture. I mean, what's called the counterculture from our era.
But was it over the counterculture or under the counterculture?
I don't know. Another way of putting it is that I'm an old hippie.
Yep.
And
you got old hips too.
Oh God, do I? And proud of it. I mean, I'm proud to be an old hippie, and why am I saying this?
Well, interestingly, you have
being in the culture.
You have something
writing about
called
the
the Kras list.
Okay, the Kras list is an email list that started when our friend Paul Krasner, who was crucial to the counterculture when he edited a magazine called The Realist. It was sort of the first underground magazine of sorts, and it was part humor magazine, part investigative, politics and investigative journalism, and a lot of humor, obviously, a lot of wit. Did you write for The Realist?
No, I never did, unfortunately.
And anyway, Paul got sick and he was dying, and his family asked me, they were inundated. He had so many friends. He was friends with everybody in the counterculture in the 60s and 70s.
He used to perform with Bergman,
Did he?
Yeah,
Oh,
they
that's
used to
right.
they used to do.
And
show
what's
together.
his name? The other guy.
Harry?
Yes,
Harry
Peter,
Shearer?
Paul, and Harry. Yes.
Oh, that's right. Peter,
Yeah,
Paul,
they
and
had a
Harry.
trio.
Really?
Yeah, called Peter, Paul, and
I'd
Harry.
forgotten that. That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so Paul, they asked me to keep Paul's friends updated about his health, and so I went into my phone book and I collected all the emails of Paul's friends, which consisted of the stars of the '60s. After Paul died, we just kept doing it, and it evolved into a list for information to be shared from all of these lights.
Great stories.
Yeah,
Great
great
stories.
storytelling, great, people sharing what they're up to, what their latest project is. Both of you guys are on the list.
Yep.
Okay.
And so it got dubbed the Krasner list after Paul, and then it got shortened to the Kras list, and thus is the Kras list.
It's sort of a vital lifeline to an entirely different generation.
Yeah, it's a bunch of old farts, basically.
Yeah. Would you say they're cranky about things the way things are right now, or philosophical?
Both, and they're also, there's a lot of wit. It's funny too.
Yeah.
There's a combination of approaches.
Sounds like an idea for a magazine. Yeah.
It is a magazine in and of itself, but the magazine industry is practically non-existent.
Yeah.
Because thank you, Mr. Internet. I miss magazines.
Oh, you can get them for a pretty expensive price. The Economist is $180 a year.
You're kidding me.
No, it's going up to $350 a year.
Well, I write for a British music magazine called Mojo.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I think in the U.S., I think it's $16 an issue.
It's a print magazine?
Yeah, print magazine.
Wow.
And I think it's $16 an issue, something like that.
Wow. I don't know how. I don't even understand those economics.
Yeah.
It's the trees.
Yeah.
They're demanding more and more.
Now, you also wrote liner notes for some big names in the music business.
I
Bob
wrote four
Dylan.
for Dylan, yeah. The first one was I had written an article about Dylan in 1970, and Dylan's management released what they called in the bootleg series, which is Bob's own bootlegs when he bootlegs himself, a box set of 1970s Dylan music that had never been released. So since I had already written about that year, they liked what I'd written, and they said, would you write the liner notes?
Cool.
Nice.
And I did, and I ended up writing 3 more sets, so 4 total.
Did you ever get to meet the man?
No.
Of course
He's not approachable.
He's not. Huh. Well, maybe if you were interested in buying some metal work.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah, he's big into that.
He is,
Huge into.
He
Does
is.
good stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah.
He's so unbelievably creative human
Yeah.
being.
Yep. Beautiful painter. And also others like Phil Ochs,
Phil Ochs,
Kris Kristofferson,
yeah, Kinky,
Mose Allison.
yeah,
Wow. Michael Bloomfield.
yeah.
How do you now? Did that because of the Dylan thing? Word got out, or
That was because I'd written a lot for Mojo magazine, which is a music magazine, a music history magazine.
So
I should
Mojo's
say.
been around for a while then.
30
Yeah,
years,
that's a
25,
while.
30 years,
25,
something
30
like
years,
that. my friend Al Cooper, musician, had read my work in Mojo, and he was going to produce a Bloomfield box set, Michael Bloomfield box set. Mm-hmm. And Michael Bloomfield was a famous blues rock guitarist, for those out there who don't know. And he asked me to write the liner notes, and it was the most fun liner notes I ever wrote.
Oh, great.
Really had a blast.
So how do you go about doing liner notes?
And I won an award. I won an ASCAP award for those.
Wow.
That's kind of a daunting prospect, to be asked to write liner notes for great artists like that. Where do you go with that?
Just like writing a magazine article.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I prefer it because there's more freedom.
Yeah. Is there much business in liner notes work these days?
It ebbs and flows.
I mean, there's not a lot of physical media being sold anymore.
No.
So where would the liner notes even go?
They still do box sets and things like that.
Yeah, the Lennon box set has a Not Insane button in it. I gave John Lennon his Not Insane button many years ago.
Really?
Yeah, Papoon for President, Not Insane.
How do you think the future will look back at this time that you helped record and distill?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, on my most optimistic days, I think that the era we're talking about, the 60s and 70s, will be considered a renaissance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it already is considered a renaissance by many people. There was a sense of freedom and ability.
There was flowers in their hair.
Phil's work was part of that for the Firesign Theater.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that all blossomed because we were at peak of empire. We were the undisputed winner of the Great World War, and we had the spoils. And that afforded a sense of material and financial luxury. We had a strong middle class because of a union movement that was eventually busted. One of the things I'm realizing in retrospect about how much wealth there was, we're at a point in our lives where we're trying to get rid of our stuff, and we think, oh, well, we just sell this stuff. You know, books. You can't give away books anymore. You can't give away anything because we had this unparalleled prosperity that I don't think any other generation's going to have. We had so much stuff alone, and we can't get rid of the stuff anymore, and that kind of reflects...
Definitely my problem.
It's ruined my apartment.
Yeah, right.
I've got piles of junk everywhere.
Well, listen, you're talking about Phil Ochs, a tragic story, actually. And Mike Ochs, his brother, who's still a friend of yours, and he had an archives that he used to, of music that he used to lease to movies.
He monetized it,
He monetized
and magazines and
stuff from the
record companies,
50s, 60s, 70s, like that.
Yeah.
And he sold all of his stuff. He did. He managed to do it, right?
Sold it to Getty Images.
Yeah. And my friend Roger Steffens finally sold his reggae collection.
He was a guest on our show, which is a great one to listen to on our podcast.
He's a trip, Roger.
Isn't he something?
What a show! What a guy! And he finally sold his incredible
reggae collection,
and it's going to be on display at a museum in Kingston, I believe.
Finally,
yeah. So he finally
decades.
So I guess it's like the 60s and 70s just in everybody's attic right now.
In my garage.
Yeah.
It's the 60s is in people's hearts and attics. Yes.
I know this is a real tough question for you, but where are we going and how do we get here with Trump? How do you make sense of what's going on? Why a guy like Trump, who has clearly proven to be who he is and has been convicted for it, is still in a neck-and-neck race with what appears to be a rational opponent?
You know, I'm not a politician, so I don't have to watch what I say. So basically, I'll say what I really think, which is I think a certain percentage of the population are idiots. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah.
Well, do you think they were dumbed down by...
Yes, I think the last...
40 years of right-wing propaganda on the radio.
I think the internet and cell phones
misinformation
has dumbed things down. Social media has dumbed things down.
And isolated people.
I mean, what's the antidote?
Don't vote for Trump.
Horrendous climate change, reality smacking people in the face and knocking the phones out of their hand?
People isolate all these ideas in their heads.
As we saw in Megalopolis, empires fall when people stop believing in them. Cynicism was ushered in with Nixon. You know, the presidency.
I am not a crook.
The presidency was diminished as early as then, in modern times, and then
Well, it's been a process. If you
Yes.
look at the chronology of history, when we were very young, there was the Kennedy assassination, which was
Right.
the inkling that all is not well in Copenhagen.
Right.
and defined our generation in many ways.
Yeah, yeah. And then there was Watergate and Nixon, and that was further alienating. And then there was Reagan, and then there was Trump. So you can see how it kept getting worse and worse and worse.
It's so strange too, because they all marketed themselves on the idea that you can't trust government, and then they got into governance, and you can't trust government. You know what I mean?
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
It was self-fulfilling
Well,
prophecy.
the outsider concept has always worked
Yeah.
for every politician.
Well,
as
of
long
course,
as they're on
that's
the,
all he's playing. Which
well,
is
Trump is certainly
immigrants.
a rotten fruit byproduct of, I think, the Reagan era that started.
Absolutely.
It's become so
Corruption of
corrupted,
the
it's
ideas.
rancid at this point. So my optimistic side is saying, have we pushed it to the very limit now?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the youth who are not burdened by our history, but are burdened by the outcomes of not our generation, but technology and the industrial age. I mean, the bills coming due on their watch in a big way. It's got to change fundamental precepts of how we function as a society. I don't think the fragmentation, the luxury of going off in your own world is going to be possible when you have a storm like Milton coming in Washington.
Yeah, you want a cooperative democracy.
It's going to force almost like a reckoning, I think. I
Remember
don't
the
know.
whole pact of democracy, I'm probably misspeaking it, but is that you are giving to the greater good because you are going to benefit from that. And that's kind of broken
lost.
down. That's,
That's been lost by consumerism. I mean, we used to
Yeah.
pride ourselves on being a consumerist society, but if you look up the word consumer, it's not a pretty term. It's a terrible term. I mean, it kind of really speaks for where we're at.
I'll tell you something. One talks about the '60s and hippies and counterculture and all that. We were against all that stuff. I mean, we were
Yes.
warning about that this stuff was
Firesign Theater,
That's right.
all of our records had
right.
exactly
that message.
That was the whole idea. Was we had
break the brainwashing.
in the '60s we had this wealth, this unprecedented wealth of empire post-war, and there was really an honest attempt to create a more idealized life on the planet. As a society, we were still progressing. We were still pushing the frontier, which is the sign of all healthy empires. We were going to the moon, and we were pushing new ideas, which gave the first shot of the whole Earth from the moon that the astronauts took, started the whole Earth movement. There was a progressive thing
and
going.
The message of
It
the whole
was.
Earth movement was we're all in this together.
Yeah, I'll say I'm on
And the
the
thing is that
spaceship.
it's now every man for himself.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that I think I agree with you, Ted, that it's not sustainable. That things like Milton are going to force people to cooperate.
Well, on that note, I feel hopeful because we are as resilient as cockroaches. We will survive. And we're out of time.
You shouldn't have connected those two things together. Cockroaches and running out of time. Anyway,
Michael
Or
Simmons.
the future.
Thank you, Michael
and running out of
Simmons.
time.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you,
what a great
guys.
conversation.
history sitting here in the chair.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having
Excellent.
me.